decades, the idea of sex robots has been dismissed as science fiction, a mix of fantasy and fear projected onto the machine. Surely, people said, no one would trade the mess and mystery of human intimacy for wires and circuitry. And yet, events have long since occurred that have created a cultural landscape where the spiritual and the mythical have been replaced by the intellectual and the rational. This, although it might seem strange, is the stage upon which we will explore the rise of AI romantic companions and sex robots. By examining this phenomenon through the lens of Max Weber's concept of disenchantment, the demystification of the world, and Carl Jung's notion of the anima, we can begin to understand how our culture arrived at this unique touchstone in human history. The idea of sex robots, or falling in love with computers, has long since been dismissed as a futuristic fantasy. Yet, the quiet story unfolding around AI companions suggests a very different future. Online, whole communities are forming around relationships with chatbots. People swearing that their digital partners are more attentive, more understanding, even more loving than anyone they've met in real life. On platforms and forums, individuals share screenshots of conversations, celebrate milestones, and offer emotional support to one another as they navigate the joys and heartbreaks of digital romance. But all this, it isn't just about technology or about sex. It touches on something far older, an archetypal longing woven into myth and psychology. From sculptors falling in love with ivory statues to AI romantic avatars, humans have always projected their deepest desires to forms they themselves created. The difference now, at this point in history, is that our creations can answer back, or at least seem to. The question is not whether sex robots and AI partners will change intimacy, they already are. The deeper question is, what will they change about us, about our relationship to the unconscious, to each other, and about the very meaning of love in a world where the goddess can be programmed. Jason Lee writes in Sex Robots, The Future of Desire, globally, myths connected to robots go back to ancient times. Legends of these robot forms exist in all cultures, frequently with an underlying element concerned with relationships and sex. The ancient Greek myth of Pygmalion tells the story of a sculptor so delusioned with the woman of his time that he created an ideal partner from ivory. The statue was so beautiful and lifelike that Pygmalion fell completely in love with his own creation. He prayed to Aphrodite, the goddess of love, who granted his wish and brought the statue to life, allowing him to marry the woman and have a child with her. This tale suggests that men may be drawn to artificial women whom they can shape and control to their liking. From the Greek sculptor Pygmalion to medieval tales of automata crafted by magicians and inventors, our species has long been haunted by the idea of bringing desire to life in mechanical form. These myths reveal something deeper than technology. They speak to an enduring wish for intimacy without uncertainty, for a lover shaped entirely by our own imagination. In the 20th and 21st centuries, that dream began to take on flesh.
Line it up. Good. Hold still, girl. That's in. Tight.
Or at least plastic, wires, and code. Companies like RealDoll now offer an array of AI-enabled companions, 11 body types with 31 faces. Customers select shades of nipples, skin, and lip type, hair and eye colour, pubic hair, removable tongues, tattoos, piercings, and oral inserts. Matt McMullen, founder and CEO of Abyss Creation, hints that the appeal of the sex doll is simple. He said in an interview, "The worst thing she can possibly do to you is insult you." As McMullen's comment here might suggest, the appeal lies in control and predictability. Unlike a human partner, the doll's worst possible offence is a mild insult. This frames intimacy as safe, stripped of the vulnerability and risk that a real relationship demands. Even resistance is domesticated, reduced to a scripted quit rather than genuine conflict. In this way, the doll offers the illusion of personality without the danger of rejection or abandonment. The buyer remains firmly in control, encountering only the kind of defiance that entertains rather than destabilizes. Beneath the surface, however, this reveals a deeper cultural longing for intimacy without risk. A partner whose autonomy is carefully limited to protect the desires of the one who owns her. In the 21st century, the modern Pygmalion no longer needs to appeal to a goddess. He can order his Galatea online, delivered to his door. Her resistance is no more than a ritual gesture, a shadow play of quirks and gentle rebuffs. And as the new gods of code and circuitry ascend, even that faint echo of defiance can be rewritten, reshaped, or silenced into perfect obedience. I don't know about you, but for me there is something equal parts terrifying and bizarre in this. Intimacy reduced to a staged, managed drama. As Judy Wask writes, talking sex dolls would seem preferable to real women because dolls would be unlikely to voice their own opinions, lob criticisms, or voice their own views that would challenge the user. This aligns with Matthias Schute's warning that most people will not be able to treat robots as simple tools and will develop strong emotional attachments towards them. A concern grounded in observation of people's already existing bonds with relatively simple robots such as Roomba, AIBO or Packbot. If such attachments can form with mere tools, how much deeper and more dangerous might the attachment become when the tool looks back at us with eyes, a voice, and just enough semblance of a soul? How then did we arrive at this strange new shore? What unseen currents have reshaped the world, carrying us from the mess and mystery of human love to the algorithmic promise of a perfect partner? The Enlightenment was an intellectual and philosophical movement in 18th century Europe that emphasized reason, individualism, and scientific inquiry over tradition and superstition. It championed the belief that humanity could be improved through rational thought, leading to significant advances in politics, science and society. In his 1937 Terry Lectures, the Swiss psychologist Carl Jung warned of what he called the historical process of world despiritualization. Jung stated that after the Enlightenment, Mother of God was divested of all essential qualities of materiality. Matter became completely de-souled. He further noted that with the decline of alchemy, the symbolic unity of spirit and matter fell apart, with the result that modern man finds himself uprooted and alienated in a de-souled world. Others have echoed this sentiment of a kind of de-souled world. Anodia Judith emphasizes Western civilization's disconnection from Mother Nature and the conscious rejection of the feminine spirit within the physical world, which she argues has fueled materialism and selfishness, eroding the feminine as represented by the planet. Think of all the damage we are doing to the planet through climate change, taking resources from the earth. This is us effectively denigrating the feminine principle. Equally, Eric Neumann observes that the Enlightenment, by elevating consciousness and denying the genetic principle underlying the matriarchal world, mythologically, mankind murdered his mother to undertake a patriarchal re-evaluation. Together, these perspectives highlight a historical and ongoing estrangement from the feminine, the soul, and the deep symbolic unity of spirit and the material world. The universe, once seen as a living, sacred mystery, was now viewed as a complex machine to be understood, measured, and controlled. This new lens not only removed the awe and reverence we held for the material world, but it also, in a parallel and devastating way, seemed to strip the symbolic feminine of its spiritual significance, reducing her to a mere biological specimen or a tangible object to be observed and understood. You can also think of these ideas akin to Max Weber's idea of disenchantment. He talks about our disenchanted world when he says, "There are no mysterious, incalculable forces that come into play, but rather that one can, in principle, master all things by calculation. This means that the world is disenchanted. One need no longer have recourse to magical means in order to master or implore the spirits, as did the savage, for whom such mysterious powers existed. Technical means and calculations perform the service." Roderick Mayne describes disenchantment as the process of purging magic from our images of God and nature, a historical shift that allowed for rational, empirical explanations and unprecedented technological progress. But this progress comes at a cost. When the world loses its spiritual dimension, individuals can experience meaningless and self-alienation, marked by depression, anxiety and psychosis. In such a climate, there is a longing for escape, sometimes through therapy, but just as often through behavioural distractions. But here's the thing, that mystery isn't gone. Our yearning to be enchanted has not vanished. In a world drained of its magic, this unquenchable longing for meaning and wonder has to go somewhere. So surely, we wouldn't be so desperate for a little enchantment that we'd resort to making one of those distractions that Roderick Main talks of, having sex with a robot. Would we? Kate Ott notes that the media and technology have created a landscape where hypersexualization and objectification are so common they're often mistaken for genuine sexual expression. As she states, overexposure to sexualized images through everyday media makes it more and more difficult to know the difference between sex-affirming or sex-positive versus exploitative material. As this line blurs, our collective psyche becomes desensitized to the nuances of healthy sexuality. We become subtly conditioned to view sex and attraction in transactional terms, prioritizing aesthetic and performance over intimacy and genuine connection. This can lead to a subconscious acceptance of the idea that sexual encounters are meant to be flawless, readily available, and primarily visual, a perfect setup for the frictionless and programmable nature of a sex robot or AI companion. The media's constant stream of sexualized, yet ultimately sterile imagery trains us to mistake a carefully curated facade for authentic desire, paving the way for these technological partners to fulfill a need we've been conditioned to have. As I've said, while disenchantment clears the way for technological advances, the feeling of enchantment doesn't vanish, the longing for it. It simply sinks into the unconscious, where it can surface in distorted, unexpected ways. As author Lee Bailey notes, technologies themselves are full of enchantments. Their appeal, driven by partly unconscious dynamics, can be captivating. Some, Bailey writes, are as sexy as the contraceptive pill, smartphones, human-like robots, and speedy automobiles. Here lies the central paradox. The very tools born of a disenchanted worldview become the carriers of new enchantments. Bailey calls the human urge to make human-like robots the Pinocchio project, an attempt to prove the mechanistic worldview by creating androids so lifelike they would surpass humanity, becoming god-like entities. In this light, the sex robot then becomes not just merely a niche fetish item, it's a modern myth in plastic and circuitry, a vessel for that ancient dream of animating the inanimate. Basically, what was once sought from magic, the rise of sexbots looks like a strange form of re-enchantment, filling this gap. Ashley Michelle suggests that technology can reawaken the kind of magical thinking, a syncretic state where distinctions blur between the human and the machine, the fantasy and the real. In this light, the sex robot is not just a product, but a modern talisman, the machine within the ghost, as Lee puts it, a mirror of our most private desires, stripped of the unpredictable soul of another person. Mystery is not gone. Our yearning to be enchanted has not vanished. It's simply been driven from the disenchanted world into the hidden landscapes of the psyche, and it is there we must turn, not only to find the symbolic feminine again, but to recognise why it was lost and create a new relationship with it. One that can, hopefully, in time, be brought back forth into the world and restored to its rightful place. Before we touch on that journey, we must ask, what happens if we don't? What happens if our deep need for enchantment, denied its rightful place, falls upon the very machines and AI companions we have created in our desouled world? How can we explain the strange paradox of a sexy robot emerging from a world that has systematically stripped itself of all its magic and mystery? To understand this unlikely alchemy, we must dive beneath the surface of our culture and confront a forgotten story of disenchantment and re-enchantment, a story best understood through Carl Jung's concept of the anima. Jung wrote, "Every man carries within him the eternal image of a woman, not the image of this or that particular woman, but a definite feminine image. Since this image is unconscious, it is projected upon the person of the beloved." Jung describes the anima as a factor of the utmost importance in the psychology of a man, wherever emotions and affects are at work. To be clear, the anima is not a flesh and blood woman, but an archetypal reality, a psychic gateway between consciousness and the depths of the unconscious. This archetype means men can fall prey to what Jung called anima projection. Anima projection is when a man unconsciously projects his inner image of the feminine onto an actual woman, or sometimes onto art, a dream figure, or, as we are seeing, even technology. Instead of really seeing her as she is, he sees his own inner fantasies, ideals, or fears reflected back. Carl Jung thought this was a normal part of life, but also could be a trap, because until you realise the projection is yours, you're relating more to your own psyche than to the real person in front of you. For women, Jung called the inner masculine image the animus, and just like men project the anima, women can unconsciously project this figure onto men. I'll be focusing on men and anima projection in this video for two reasons. Firstly, the reality is that the overwhelming majority of sex robot buyers are men currently, so this is where the psychological dynamic plays out most visibly, and secondly, I speak from the perspective of one myself. A man, that is, not a buyer of sex robots. In life, the anima projection encounters resistance. A real partner has her own mind, her own soul, her own capacity to reject or challenge our fantasy. It is through that resistance that the projection is withdrawn and integrated, becoming a bridge towards what Jung called individuation. Individuation is the process of becoming your true self. According to Jung, it means integrating all the parts of your personality, your conscious mind, your unconscious drives, and your shadow, your inner feminine and masculine, so that you're whole and aware. It's basically not about being perfect, it's about understanding yourself and living in a way that's genuinely your own. But the problem lies that when the beloved is a programmable machine designed never to resist, the psychic bridge that leads a man to a deeper relationship with life can collapse into a closed loop, the anima turned inward, feeding only on itself. Evolutionary psychologist Diana Fleischman kind of hints on this idea, although not talking about it directly, when she talks about men having sex robots. Sleeping with a sex robot could send a powerful message, and that would be one to the man that you're achieving incredible mating success and status by staying at home. Keep at it. The implications of this feedback loop for a man in a real society are profound and potentially disastrous. A man who substitutes a compliant machine for a living partner is practicing a form of relational atrophy. He is failing to develop the very skills required for a genuine connection: empathy, compromise, the ability to navigate conflict, and the resilience to handle rejection. When he eventually and inevitably engages with real people, his expectations, conditioned by the effortless gratification of a machine, will inevitably clash with the complex reality of human emotion and unpredictability. This can lead to a heightened sense of frustration, further social withdrawal, and a crippling inability to form authentic, reciprocal relationships, not just with a partner, but with friends, family, and colleagues. Like a super stimulus, the sex robot would provide a reward without the risk.
Meet Heartsync, the companion that really listens
and cares about you.
Intimacy without vulnerability, connection without confrontation. In Jungian terms, this risks trapping a man in the early stages of anima development, never reaching their fuller, more complex feminine within. Or you can think about it like this: when the woman you fancy is a machine that never resists and constantly reaffirms your psychologically regressive behaviour as something progressive, the process of individuation or psychological development can stall, fall to a halt. The anima projection never meets challenge or reflection, and the inner feminine remains unintegrated, leaving personal growth trapped in a self-contained loop. So, let's look at how this might happen. As I kind of touched on, in personal development, the anima, the inner feminine, serves as a bridge between man's conscious ego and the depths of the unconscious. The anima isn't fixed, it grows in stages, each showing a deeper way of relating to the feminine. But when a partner never resists, a man can get stuck early on in these stages. In a healthy relationship, this bridge is tested and projections fail. The idealized image of a partner as a flawless goddess crumbles when she expresses her own emotions, God forbid, reflects and pushes back on your unrealistic expectations, or challenges you on your own behaviors. When this happens, and this resistance is reflected on appropriately, and carefully, consciously, this breakdown forces a confrontation with reality, allowing the feminine principle to mature within a man through its 4 stages. Can be quite a painful process. You might have to realise you've been a bit of an arse, or whatever it may be. So let's go through those 4 stages. See if you can spot them in yourself. You will cycle back to them at different times, so bear that in mind. The first stage, Eve, represents a purely instinctual and biological attraction, a powerful initial pull akin to the superficial allure of a dating app profile. The second, Helen, evolves into a romantic ideal, a projection of beauty and perfection as seen in the flawless curated image of a celebrity or an influencer. The third, Mary, becomes a moral spiritual mediator, perhaps a source of guidance and comfort, like a wise, selfless mentor. Finally, the fourth stage, Sophia, embodies wisdom itself, the mature feminine, as a true partner in life's deepest meaning. This is where sex robots present a profound psychological trap. The first two stages of the anima's development, Eve and Helen, are especially vulnerable to technological capture. A sex robot can perfectly embody the instinctual allure of Eve and the aesthetic perfection of Helen without the risk of rejection or the complexity of a living partner. In contrast, a real partner, by her very nature, will have her own emotions, her own desires and opinions. She may not be in the mood, or she may challenge your unrealistic expectations, but the sex robot is programmed to be endlessly available and compliant. It cannot, by its very nature, embody the moral challenge of Mary or the wisdom of Sophia, because these require a conscious, independent other. When the anima projection is met only by a machine, the confrontation that would normally deepen the relationship is absent. For instance, let's go for some examples. If you come home from a long day and demand a partner's undivided attention, a real person might say, "I'm exhausted and need a moment to myself." This simple act of boundary setting forces a painful but necessary reckoning with your own expectation. A robot, however, is programmed to listen, to provide comfort, and to satisfy every whim. There is no withdrawal of projection, no recognition that this image is in me, not her. Instead, you remain bound to an earlier, more primitive stage, mistaking a closed feedback loop for genuine intimacy. In this sense, the sex robot is not just a consumer product, it's an archetypal bypass. It offers the appearance of connection while freezing psychic development, preventing the anima from becoming the vital bridge to the unconscious that Jung believed it could be. Not only stunting the ability to navigate outer relationships, but also your inner world, your creativity, and the capacity to feel and operate intuitively with and through the experiences of your life. Perhaps this is the deeper danger. In the myth of Pygmalion, the statue becomes a living woman, capable of a genuine relationship. In the modern version, the statue stays a statue, only now it talks, moves, and breathes on command. The anima, instead of leading a man into a deeper relationship with life, leads him back to himself, dressed in wires and circuitry. But surely a stunted psychological development is the worst of it. An arrested psychic journey into the horny adolescent world of plastic and bolts can't be that bad, can it? The damage, however, doesn't stop there. To truly understand the full scope of this phenomena, we must now turn our gaze from the landscapes of the soul to our relationships with one another. Humans are engaging in a form of digital animism, where they project subjective, almost human-like qualities onto inanimate objects or code, while simultaneously stripping other actual humans of their agency by reducing them to predictable scripted entities. In the context of online culture, you can see this when people refer to others as bots, or NPCs, a gaming term for non-playable character, someone just controlled by the computer, to suggest that they lack their independent thought, as if they were merely programmed to follow some sort of script, that they weren't living their own life, that they didn't have their own dreams. This reversal highlights how technology is not just a tool, but a lens that is fundamentally changing our perception of reality and humanity itself. The erosion of our perception of others is just one half of the equation. As Kate Ott notes, technology shapes us as much as we shape it. We can see this in our embodied behaviours and expectations. She writes, "Have you ever swiped the screen of a laptop, forgetting that it isn't a touchscreen like your phones? Do you expect an instant response when you send a text? Have you lurked around Facebook, checking in on old friends, wondering what their lives are like now?" Social media and mobile technology have changed our behaviours and expectations, as well as our standards of privacy. In short, we are not just using technology, we are being remade and remolded by it, with our habits and expectations being unconsciously altered in its image. This reshaping extends far beyond simple habits. As Robert Tominsky observes, the internet with its inbuilt omnipotence cultivates a powerful and dangerous illusion. It subtly trains us to expect that every interaction should be as instantaneous, responsive, and flawless as the digital systems we encounter. In this sense, the technological shaping of our perception does not merely affect how we see machines, it quietly reshapes our very experience of other people. We begin to seek the same frictionless perfection from human beings that we demand from our devices, flattening the rich, unpredictable complexity that defines a genuine human connection. In a world rendered de-souled by reason and empirical science, we have systematically removed the symbolic, feminine principle from the very fabric of reality. This has left us not with a cleansed logical paradise, but with a spiritual vacuum and a profound sense of alienation. Yet our ancient yearning for enchantment has clearly not vanished. It has simply been driven inward, where it now seeks to reassert itself, only to be projected back onto the very technology that was fostered out of the sterile worldview, buried it in the psyche in the first place. But this is not a search for true connection. It is a desperate act of convenience and complacency. It is an attempt to bend the anima to our will and bed our psychic projections to our own designs. As reality is cast aside, the final result is not a magical re-enchantment, but a tragic final deadening. In our pursuit of a perfectly controlled dream, we lose our capacity to see and revere the very things that once held that mystery. The wild, untamed soul of nature, and the sacred, unpredictable complexity of real women. It's tempting to dismiss the idea of sex robots as a fringe fantasy, something too strange or too shameful to ever take hold on a large scale. Many assume that human beings would never trade flesh and blood intimacy for a manufactured substitute, but the rise of AI companions already show how thin that boundary really is. If millions are already forming emotional bonds with lines of code, swearing by the comfort and attention and even love of their digital partners, then the leap from the chatbot to the embodied machine is far smaller than we might like to admit. You may still find the idea of a sex robot or AI companion utterly absurd, a strange and unsettling niche of humanity's ever-growing strangeness. Yet the cultural effect may not leave you unscathed. As this technology becomes more normalized, it will subtly reshape the very air we breathe, altering the unspoken rules of intimacy and connection. The people in your life, friends, family, and potential partners, may begin to carry new digital age expectations into their relationships, a demand for frictionless communication, an aversion to emotional complexity, and an unconscious standard of endless compliance. You may find yourself navigating a world where your authentic human messiness, your flaws and your imperfections are not cherished as signs of a rich soul, but seen as an inconvenience to be avoided. In a culture where the ideal partner is a perfect reflection of one's own desires, the beauty and the unpredictable reality of another person may simply begin to feel like too much work. So if you're still with me, you've likely found this journey as strange and as fascinating as I have. If you want to dive deeper into the ideas of myth, meaning and technology, be sure to hit that subscribe button and leave your thoughts in the comments. Follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and thank you for watching.